Okay. So, as I just mentioned, today's topic is Active Directory. So, Active Directory is the Microsoft Identity and Access Management Service. This is one of the key service or a service in the information technology. Okay. So, before I get started, I would like to ask you, do you know anything about Active Directory? Anybody?
No, no, sir.
Uh, yes, yes, sir. Like it is a centralized storage system where we have access to all users and services and other things like
Yeah. See, Active Directory in the sense, it is one of the key service of Microsoft. Okay, it is the core identity and access management services where you can create your a domain environment. Okay, like say for example, whenever you create a new user, like say Mallikarjun at the rate facebook.com, that facebook.com is the domain. Okay, and your username will be Mallikarjun at the rate facebook.com or microsoft.com. Okay, so we can create user accounts. We can set the passwords. We can create the computer objects, and whenever you want to access anything, we can use the same username, and we can grant you access so that whatever that you try to access within the Active Directory environment or the domain environment, the Active Directory will make sure you enter your username and password, and it will make sure whoever is accessing, right, that is the legitimate access. Means the user should enter the username and password, and once he enter the username and password, it will validate whether the entered username and password are valid, or the user is a legitimate user and that access is a legitimate access. Okay, it will make sure like that. By doing this, it increases the security of your environment. Okay, and it will also provides you hierarchical structure of your office. Like say for example, consider a company called Microsoft. So Microsoft means it is not a small company. Okay, it has got offices over the world, right? So if you don't have a proper structure, you will not be able to control the users and computers and the accesses. So what they will do, in within the Microsoft.com, we are going to create organizational units. Say for example, when I say Microsoft India, under Microsoft there will be a folder called India, that is called as organizational unit. Under that we will create multiple different offices, organization units. Say for example, when I say India, in India not only one place we have the Microsoft office. We have offices in Hyderabad, we have offices in Pune, we have office in Delhi, and we have in Bangalore. Correct? Huh? So what we will do, we will create four subfolders within the India OU. Okay, like one for Bangalore, one for Hyderabad, one for Pune, one for Delhi. Under that Bangalore, again we are creating multiple departments: HR department, IT department, sales department, admin department. Under IT again subfolders. Your say for your Windows team, your Linux team, your backup team, your SAP basis team, or your middleware team, or your network team. Like that, multiple departments will be created. So this structure is then a hierarchical structure. Okay, so like in a Microsoft domain, under that India, under that Bangalore, under that IT, under that subfolders, within that sub OUs, your ID will be created, your Active Directory ID will be created, your username and password will be set in that OU. Okay, that is the hierarchical structure of the Active Directory. So let us get started then, a little bit more on the background. Okay, see, why do we need Active Directory? I just told you. Before we go to the Active Directory, if there is no Active Directory, all the machines will be in the work group. Okay, there are two things. One is work group and the domain. So when I say work group, here the computers will be having peer-to-peer connection. Like say for example, if you are already working in a small companies like where you have 20, 30 computers, you will be able to establish or you will be able to communicate the computers among all the computers in the office. Say for example, if you have 20 computers, computer 1 can talk to remaining 19 computers. Okay, but anybody can access your data. Say for example, if the workgroup computer is there, means there is no security. If you just put double slash and the computer name, all the data will be visible there. Whatever data is there in the computer one, that can be accessed in computer 2 and the remaining 18 computers also. There is no security at all, but communication is there. All the 10 computers or 20 computers can talk to each other. You can share the data from here to other computer, or you can take the data from other computer to your computer. There is no security at all. And another challenge is the administrator. Okay, say for example, you have 10 computers. Each and every user account for the computer will be separately created in the local computer only. Means you have a computer one, in that you have created user one. In the computer 2 we have created user 2. In the computer 3 we have created user 3. Like that, up to computer 20 you have created user 20. So here you are not creating the user account in a central place. You are creating the users in each and every computers. I told you previously there are two types of users. One is local user, another one is domain users. The domain user means we will create inside the Active Directory server. Local user means we will create the user account in the local computers. I told you, local user manager, if you go there you can create the users. Those users we call it as local users. If you create the users in the domain controller, that is called as domain users. So here, since we are creating the user accounts in the local computer, the administration burden will be more. Like you need to remember all the usernames and password to do the administration. Correct. Now, and say for example, today you are in India, you're working somewhere, and tomorrow you are traveling to US, and you have not carried your laptop. Okay, it was an urgent call event like that, and you wanted to take some critical information which is stored in your laptop. If it is work group, you cannot take the backup until and unless somebody logs into your computer and shares the data. But in case of domain, it is not like that. I'll explain you. Okay. So in the domain, it is not like that. Say for example, you are in computer one, and the user is created in the domain controller, the user one. So tomorrow you are going to US, and there you want to access some data. You can ask the US somebody administrator to grant access to some computer for the same username. Then the same username called user one can be given access to some other computer locally there in the US. As soon as you log in, all your OneDrive, G Drive, everything will be getting connected to that computer. And if you have stored the data in your shared drive, maybe your G Drive or OneDrive, that data can be accessed from there. That is the beauty of the uh, domain. So now you know the limitations of workgroup. Okay, 1 second. Let me pour on my tab. I want to write something. So to make it even more simpler, you see here, this is the picture actually. This represents the work group. And I was telling you, all the computers, here we have four computers, okay? Computer 1, computer 2, computer 3, and computer 4. And you see here, all the four computers are interconnected with the help of a switch. Okay, so with the help of the switch, all the computers are interconnected and there is a communication. And I told you the user account will be separately created. For computer one, user account is separately created, computer two user account is separately created, computer three user account is separately created, like that computer 4 also. So you cannot leverage this user to computer 1 because your ID is created in the local computer. But in case of domain, it is not like that. You see, this picture, the second picture represents the domain. This represents the domain. And you see here also we have three computers. Those three computers are connected network with the help of a switch. But however, there is a domain controller here. Okay. here domain controller. So what we have done, you have created the user account not in the local computer here. You have created here under the, for example, under IT. So you, this is IT, okay. There is a folder called IT. Inside this folder, you have created user 1, you have created user 2, you have created user 3. So when you are granting access to this computer, you will pull the user from here and grant access to user. Okay. And tomorrow you go to some US and you want to access some data. What you can do, you can use the same user account from here and give access to this one, user one. But this is a different computer because the users are not created in the local computer, the users are created in the domain controller. So since the domain controller you have created already, you can use the same user and grant access to the remote computer. You can log in there and get the things done. Okay, so now you have understood. Okay, work group means it is of no security because there is anybody can access the data, anybody can look into your computer, and the administration burden is very difficult. And one more challenge I'll tell you. Say for example, there is a security warning. So some ransomware attack or some virus attack has happened in case of work group, and your manager told please disable the pen drive, people should not use the pen drive because the virus has come from the pen drive only. So then what you have to do, you have to log into each and every computer, 10 computer or 20 computers or 100 computers manually and go to the settings and disable the changes. So the management burden is huge here in the work group. But in case of domain, it is not like that. So domain means it is a security boundary. So that's why I have circled here. See, domain means I have circled here. See, circle is there. Means it is completely covered. It is completely compounded. Okay. So it's completely fenced. If you want to get into the domain, you need to show your identification. You should prove your authentication. Like you have to enter your username and password. If you don't enter your username and password, you will not be logged into the domain environment. Okay. That is why we will call it as domain means it's a security boundary. Here, the computers are networkly connected, but the user accounts are created in the domain controller, which is of your central store. So we will store all your user information and computer information in a central server, and that server we will call it as domain controller. Because you can control the entire domain using that server, that is why we will call that as a domain controller. Okay, and the beauty of the domain controller na, so if you want to apply some changes, say for example there are 1,000 users and you want to block the pen drive for all the 1,000 users, it is not very difficult compared to work group because since you have separated the users like IT users separate, network users are separate, admin users are separate, you can go to the respective OU, right click and create a new policy and mention pen drive should be disabled. Within less than 1 or 2 minutes, your entire 1,000 computers will be disabled the pen drive. That is the easy and the beauty of the domain option. Okay. So now you know work group is unsecure, domain is secured. Work group means administration overburden, domain means you can make use of the easy administration. And work group means you have to create the user accounts in each and every computer. Domain means you can create it in the central store. Okay. So now you know domain is secure, work group is unsecure. Now, if you ask me, sir, it's fine, sir. It is important to have a domain environment because domain makes our life easy. Then how can I convert one unsecure work group into a secure domain work environment? Okay, that is possible using the service called Active Directory. Okay, if you install the service called Active Directory domain services in a server operating system, see here I mentioned client and server here. Client means it is Windows 7, XP, 8, Windows 10, Windows 11 are the client computers. Okay, server means you should have an operating system of server like starting from Windows 2000 till 2016, 2019 and 2020, 22. Okay, to promote a domain controller or to create a domain environment, you should have a server operating system. Okay, when you have the server operating system, what you can do, you can install the Active Directory domain services in the computer and you can promote that computer to act as a domain controller. Okay, so once you install the Active Directory domain services and promote that computer as a domain controller, then you can start getting the below things, the benefits of the Active Directory. So what is the help of the Active Directory? I told you it provides you centralized authentication. Means you don't need to create the user account in the local computers here. You have to create the users here. Okay, say for example, this is a ITOU. Here you have user 1, user 2. When we grant access to these users to this computer, okay, when the user enter, when the user he enters some username and password, the authentication come to your domain controller, and domain controller just go and check the authentication to the computer one, whether the user whatever username entered that is valid or not. Then the, if the validation is done, then only the user will be allowed inside. So when the user enter the username and password, the authentication will not happen in the local computer. It will be happened in the Active Directory domain server. That is why it is centralized authentication, because we store everything in the central store. That is called as the Active Directory domain controller. When you enter your username and password, the authentication will not happen in your local computer. The Active Directory takes that username and password and go to the domain controller, and it will ask, hey you, can you please check whether the user called Mallikarjun or Vishwa is there or not. Then the computer will validate, okay, Vishwana or Mallikarjun, yes, the username is there. Whatever password he has entered, yes, that is correct. Then he will allow. That is called as centralized authentication. And then it provides a centralized administration. I told you, right? In the case of work group, you need to log into each and every computer to make the changes, the setting, USB disable or pen drive disable. But in case of domain controller, it is not like that. I told you here is the user folder is there, IT, and all the users are inside this ITO. You just right click on this folder and create a new policy, okay, and disable USB, apply. As soon as you apply that policy, all the users who are inside the ITOU will be easily or very immediately the USB will be blocked. When you plug the USB pen drive, it won't detect only. So this helps you to make the administration by sitting in the local one domain controller. You don't have to log into each and every computer to disable. Just go to the one place called domain controller, go to the group policy, create a new policy and apply. That is called as centralized administration. The next one is single sign on. So I told you, right, it will as when you go to the office every day morning, you will enter your username and password. Since you are entering your username and password, your authentication will be done. Your computer will be logged in, okay, and the domain controller will give you a token for 10 hours. Like you go to the movie, you'll buy a ticket. When you buy a ticket, that ticket is valid for that particular day and particular show. The 2.5 hour session, you can go n number of time outside, n number of time inside. Nobody will ask you because you have paid for that session. The same thing happen here. Once you enter the username and password, your authentication will be done. Next time it won't go and ask the domain controller because you already have a ticket. Then your computer will just look for the ticket is there or not. If the ticket is there, it will allow. Okay, that's how it works. Okay, so single sign-on means morning you already entered username and password. Okay, and afternoon you are trying to access some applications. So since you are trying to access some applications, it won't ask you any username and password again. Since you already entered the username and password, it will just use the same username and password and grant the access to you to the other applications. Say for example, you want to apply some leave, you want to look for some other reimbursement issues or something. Okay, then it won't ask you username and password. As soon as you click on the link, it will be logged into the new applications as well because you already entered the username and password morning time. Okay, and the ticket is there for 10 hours. So whatever applications are single sign-on enabled, those applications will be automatically logged in if you click on the applications. Okay, that is called a single sign-on. So, and next one is Active Directory configured server. We call it as domain controller. So I already started talking about the domain controller, right? The domain controller is nothing but that is a server where you have installed the Active Directory domain services and configured it as a domain controller. That's all. Because you can control the entire domain by using that computer, and that is the reason we call that computer as the domain controller. Okay? Any question here, guys? So now we learned what is workgroup, what is domain environment. So and you understood that domain is very easy, and the domain is helping you to do lot of things. Okay, then how can you convert a domain, a work group, into a domain? You know that you need to install the Active Directory domain services and promote it to a domain controller. As soon as you promote that to a domain controller, you get all these four features like centralized authentication, centralized administration, and single sign-on. Okay, so these are the benefits. Okay, with that, this is very important actually. Let us try to understand more about the components. Okay, so going forward, I use lot of new terminologies. Okay, before I get into that, I would like to provide you some insight about the Active Directory and the components of the Active Directory. Okay, so when I say Active Directory components, there are two types of.
Uh,
Yep.
s- Sorry, is it it's similar to a server only, like domain controllers?
It is a server only.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, sir.
See, it is a server only. Say, for example,
Okay.
in a server, if you install DHCP, we will call it as a DHCP server.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Instead of
Okay.
DHCP, if you install Active Directory Domain Service role, we will call it as a domain controller. That's all.
Okay, sir.
Another name of a server. That's all. Instead of calling it as a server, we will call
Uh-huh.
that server as a domain controller because all the users, computers, Active Directory will be controlled in that computer. That is the reason we'll call it as a domain controller. Okay.
Okay, 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 sir.
Yeah. Now, there are two types of components in the Active Directory. Okay, one is physical component, another one is logical component. So, when I say physical component, the components which you can touch and feel. Logical component means you will only imagine. So today we are doing this class. This is your virtual class. You don't know me and I don't know you. Okay, you are just connecting based on some your voice and my voice. You are assuming, oh, I will be look like this and you will be look like that. Correct? That is logic. The virtual means it's logic. So physical means in front of you, you have a laptop. You can touch and feel it. Correct? You see how many keys are there. You can touch and feel how the smoothness is. Everything you can feel in the physical. But in case of logical, it is left to your imagination. Right. So there are two types of component. One is physical component. Another one is logical component. The physical component means the components which you can touch and feel. Like, I told you, you create a new computer. In front of you there is a laptop or a desktop. So what you will do, you'll install Active Directory domain controller in that computer by installing the Active Directory domain services, and you promote it to domain controller, and you can touch and feel that. Correct? Now that is called as root domain controller. Means the very first domain controller, that you are going to create. So say for example you had a workgroup environment till now, and today you are going to create a new server and installing the Active Directory domain services, and you're creating a new domain called microsoft.com. And the very first server which you have installed the domain controller, that is called as root domain controller. Say for example, if I ask your family tree, who is the first person of your family tree, you normally tell your grandparent or grandfather name because he is the root of your family. Correct? Huh? So that is the same thing. Additional domain controller means, say for example, you have started an organization, startup. So that startup was there in Bangalore. In Bangalore, you have created one domain controller, and that is your DC01. That is your root domain controller because this is the first domain controller. Later, what happens? Your business started growing and your business started getting the demand in Hyderabad. Initially, for 6 months or 1 year, you managed with the Bangalore domain controller only because in Hyderabad, very less user were 10 15 users were there. And as the market grows, in the demand also for Hyderabad location got increased, and you started hiring new engineers. That 10 engineers became now 1000 engineers in Hyderabad itself. So one domain controller, Bangalore around 5000 users, Hyderabad around 1000 users are there. When they enter the username and password, it will be very slow. It will take 5 seconds to just log in and allow you log in. And when you click on some applications, again the authentication should happen. It will go to the domain controller, get the validation, and then allow. So that is time consuming, and there is a delay in accessing the application. Then what you thought, since you have already 1000 users in Hyderabad and your business is getting expanded there, you thought of not using the Bangalore location domain controller, and you thought of having a dedicated domain controller to have the workload balanced for the Hyderabad location. Okay, for the Hyderabad users to give the authentication and performance to increase, you are adding one more domain controller called DC02 in Hyderabad location. Okay, now you already have one domain controller and you are adding in another domain controller as an addition. Correct, na? That is why we will call it as an additional domain controller. But both are same domain only. Both are Microsoft.com only. Okay, you are adding additional domain controller to the Hyderabad office to the same domain called Microsoft.com. Okay, that is the additional domain controller. So, for example, you say for example you and your brother are there. Okay, you completed your graduation, you started working, and the entire family responsibility will be yours because you are the only one person who is earning. Okay, so after 2 years, your brother also completed graduation and he also started working and he is also started bringing the salary and all. Then you feel somewhat relaxed because he is going to no give you some additional support to you. Correct, na? So that is called as additional support. The same concept goes here. If you are adding another domain controller to the same domain to reduce the workload for an existing domain controller, that is called as additional domain controller. Means you have one getting added one. Say for you have first car. Okay, it's a big car. Maybe you are going to add one more car for the local usage, small car, okay, to run in the traffic or something like that. So already have one, you are buying one more, that is called as additional. The same goes here. Root means the first one, additional means whatever you are going to add additionally. It can be 1, 2, 10, 10, 100 also can be there, no problem. Okay, that is the root domain controller and the additional domain controller. Then the next one is child domain controller. So child means, say for example, you started a new company called Microsoft.com that was started in, say for example, in US. This is in India, and you started one more office in US. But the country wise, there are a lot of restrictions will be there. Regional restrictions. You cannot transfer the data from India to foreign, and from foreign you cannot take the data. There are lot of terms and conditions will be there in each and every country. So what you thought to instead of having a separate Microsoft.com, I mean having the same domain Microsoft.com there, you are going to create a small company there with a child name. Okay, child means now what they have done, they have created a new domain called USA.microsoft.com. They are going to create a new child company for the Microsoft.com. See, Microsoft.com is a parent, it is there, and the new one is USA. So USA is a new company under Microsoft.com. Okay, so USA is a new domain for the Microsoft.com they created for the US location, because not all the terms and conditions are common in each and every organization or each and every country. Okay, each and every country has got its own regional restrictions. That is the reason to segregate the policies, all those things. We create another domain called USA, and that USA is called as child domain controller. This is an example I'm giving you. Okay, say for example Tata. Tata has got lot of companies. We have Tata Motors is there, uh, Tata Motors, we have Tata Groceries, we have Tata softwares are there, what not is there, everything is there. Tata, correct? Reliance also same thing. They have network, they have softwares, they have refinery, they have everything they have, correct? So Reliance is the parent company. Maybe under that we have small child companies. Okay, so those are all the childs I'm talking about. Okay, that is called as child domain controller. So next one is read-only domain controller. So read-only means, say for example, you have your office in Bangalore. Okay, similarly, your business is there in Bangalore, but for your business, all the raw materials are uh, coming from the ships and all. Okay, so to take care of that receivables and exports, everything, import export things, you have set up a small office in Mangalore. Okay, in Mangalore you only have around 20 users. Okay, so every time when the user enter the username and password, I cannot send the username and password to Bangalore because it is long distance and time consuming. So what you thought, instead of sending the username and password to the Bangalore domain controller, why can't you create a small server here? Okay, but that should have only read only permission. Read only domain controller means whatever users are created here, everything will be synchronized here. Okay, then when the user from Bangalore enter the username and password, that will be validated here only in the Bangalore office. I don't need to send the username and password to the another domain controller of Bangalore, because to save the timings and increase the performance. So when I say RODC, all the user information from the writable domain controller will be copied to the read-only domain controller, but you cannot create username, you cannot reset the password, you cannot create the groups in the Bangalore domain controller, which is a RODC, because as the name itself tells, it's read-only domain controller. You cannot write operations, you cannot do write operations in the read-only domain controller. Okay, why do we need RODC? When you have less users, when you have distance, to increase the performance, we create the read-only domain controller. Is it clear, guys? This is about the physical components. Any doubt here?
Uh, like we can apply policies will be same for like a root domain controller and the
Everything is same.
additional.
Exactly.
Okay.
Everything is same.
But we can apply different policies for child domain controller for if it is
For
exist.
child is a different. Child is entirely different.
Okay.
See, Tata, when I say Tata
Okay.
Motors, entirely companies, even everybody is different.
Yes.
Tata Softwares, the entire CEO, MD, everybody is different. But we call it a Tata. So Tata is the parent company. Okay, and the child, motors, groceries, softwares, everybody separate business. That is business, separate business itself. Okay, so there is no relationship, but the child is there. It is a child, but no relevance. But you
Yes.
can even sometimes what happens, we can, if you want, we can enable the connection, like Tata Motors people can access the application of Tata Softwares, Tata Softwares people can access the Tata Motors applications. We can create some trust, and we can grant access there.
Okay. But policies will be centralized, like for root and the additional policies will be same. If we apply, we can't apply individually.
Child is
Like
different, child is different, that's what
okay,
I'm telling. The
okay,
policies are
okay,
entirely
okay,
different now, because the software industry is
okay.
different, and motor in
Oh,
automobile industry is different.
oh,
Yeah.
okay, sir.
Yeah,
Oh,
policies are different. That is why, since the different policies are, that's why we have created child here. If it is the
yes, yes,
same
that is
policies, you would have created the same route only, no?
yes. Okay, sir.
Okay,
Okay.
yeah. So then let us start with the logical components then. So logical components, also there are four logical components actually. Okay. So yeah, one second. Yeah. Okay. So the logical components means, right? So I told you the logic behind each and every person is different. Okay, there are four logical components. One is forest, tree, domain, and OU. Okay, so what do you mean by forest, guys? There are four logical components. Okay, these are all imaginable. Okay, that is why I'm telling you uh, it is logical components. Okay, there are four logical components in the Active Directory, We call it as forest, tree, domain, and OU. Okay. So when I say forest, what do you mean by a forest? Normal layman terminologies. If you go and ask your father or mother, what they will tell about the forest? Hmm? What will be there in the forest?
uh, wild animals,
Hmm? Then
wildlife sanctuary, and, trees and different kind of plants and trees also will find over there. So
good. So next to my village, we have thick trees. Lot of trees are there, but there is no animal at all in that. Not even a dog. Can that be called as a forest? Too much of trees,
No,
bushes are there. Too much of trees are there. Too much of bushes are there. Rivers are there. Everything is there. Can that be called as a forest? But there is no animal.
no, it can't be called
How come? How come?
because there doesn't have any wildlife animals. So that even both we have in the forest we have to contain both wildlife animals and both for trees and plants over there. So it's called forest.
Okay. One more example now. So in next to my home there is a zoo. Lot of wild animals are there. Too many birds, animals are there. Okay, thousand together in each every cage. Okay, but there is no trees. Can that be called as a forest then? You said no
No,
animals are
sir,
not.
because no, because it's been controlled by some other person. But
What?
in forest, it's not been controlled with any other person. So it's called as forest. So it's called as zoo.
Any other answer, guys? Are you guys agree? Is it mandatory? Is it mandatory to have the animals in the forest to be called as a forest? What is the main thing?
I think which is suitable for human life. Like for generally, if you are able to live there, then it is not a forest. I think.
That's what. See, I'm asking to be called one place as a forest. What should be there? Minimum, mandatory. What should be there?
A lot of trees and different
Exactly.
kind. Yes.
Only trees. No necessary. It is whether you have animals or not, falls or not, rivers or not. If I want to call a place as a forest, that means there should be lot of trees, bushes. That's all. It is not necessarily to have animals or not. Okay, in my village there are a lot of forests are there. There is no wildlife animals only. You may have small animals, but that animals to be there, you don't need to have forests. Animals can be wherever they want. Correct. If you go to Africa, there is no trees only. Only bushes will be there. But still still that call it as a forest. So basically the thing is to be called a place as a forest, we need to have trees there. What kind of trees? We should have lot of trees. Okay, this collection of trees we will call it as forest. So here the forest name can be example Microsoft.com or Tata example. Okay, now you understood. Forest means it's collection of trees with a dedicated domain namespace. That's why I have mentioned Microsoft.com here, because whatever examples I'm going to give you now, that will have this ends with Microsoft.com. Okay. Then tree. Tree means what? Tree means it's collection of domains. See, for example, in the Microsoft.com, in the previous example, I have given like DC01, DC02, DC03, RODC, correct na? So different domains will be there. Say for example here, uh, uk.microsoft.com, usa.microsoft.com. india.microsoft.com. So this is all different domain. Child domain I was telling, the same thing. UK is a child, US is a child, US and India is a child. But the forest is Microsoft.com. So each and every domains are linked to this forest under the Microsoft.com. If you see here, after India you have Microsoft.com. After UK you have Microsoft.com. After USA you have Microsoft.com. So here we have a continuous namespace, and that continuous namespace, this is the one I was talking about. Now you know forest means it's collection of trees. For example, the tree name can be Microsoft.com. Okay. Then we learn about tree. What do you mean by tree? A tree is nothing but group of domains. India is a domain, UK is a domain, US is a domain. But they're all child domains. That's okay. No matter whether you have a domain or child domain, but they are a domain with the dedicated namespace called Microsoft.com. That is why we call it as trees. Then what is a domain? Each and every domain. Each and every domain is a security boundary. Security boundary. Okay. So you already know about domain. Domain means it's a security boundary. You need to enter username and password to log in and access anything and everything, right? So that is the security boundary, means domain. Next one is OU. Organization unit is nothing but the folder structure. I was explaining you know, like you have a OU called like Bangalore, sorry, India. Under that Bangalore, under that IT, under that you have Linux team, you have Windows team, you have developer, you have testing team. Okay, this is called as OU. OU is nothing but the organization unit or the folder structure to create your classes and attributes. Means your username, your passwords, those things are computer objects. So now you know there are two types of component. One is physical component, another one is logical component. There are four physical component: RDC, ADC, CDC, and RODC. Okay, and there are four logical components: forest, tree, domain, and OU. Root domain controller means the very first domain controller that you create in your office. Additional domain controller means any domain controller that you add additionally. That is called as additional domain controller. Child domain controller means it is the child for an existing parent. Okay. Due to the policies and rules and regulations, we have created a separate domain with a dedicated namespace that is called as child domain controller. And read-only domain controller means the domain controller having all the features of root domain or additional domain controller, but it will only have read operations. You cannot create, you cannot delete, you cannot modify the objects, or you cannot reset the password. You cannot do any operations. Only authentication will be done. That's all. Then the logical component means collection of trees with a dedicated domain namespace. The forest means it's collection of trees. Okay. Tree means collection of domains. Domain means it's a security boundary. OU means it's an organization unit. That's all. Clear? Any question here?
So can you please come again with the physical components or that ADC, additional domain controller? I didn't get that.
Say for example, you started a new company. Okay, your company name can
Okay.
be mybusiness.com. You started a startup, maybe you started in Bangalore. Okay, so there you just started with first 10 engineers. Later what happens, your business is started growing, that 10 became 100, became 1000 engineers now. So there are 1000 engineers, developer, testing team, everybody started working there. Okay, so as the business increased, what happens, the demand also started getting, maybe in Bangalore or outside also, no problem. But when you started, only 10 users were there, and that time you planned less computer, like 4 GB memory or 2 CPU, like that you planned. As the number of users are started increasing, that one computer is unable to give the authentication faster, as fast as possible compared to the previous one, because now a lot of users are there. See, you are able to do 10 work at a time. What if 20 people ask the same work to do? You will not be able to manage. So to reduce the workload or burden, you are adding another domain controller either in the same location or the different location, no problem. Say for example, you consider in the same location, now previously 10 users were there, now 1000 users are there. You think that this domain controller is unable to handle the 1000 requests per second. So what you thought, you are going to add an additional domain controller to share the workload. RDC 500 users, ADC 500 users will take care. When you enter the username and password, say for example there are 1000 user, enter the username and password. All the 1000 users go and rush to the ADC, I mean RDC, root domain controller. The root domain controller may take some time to respond back. So if you have additional domain controller, the as soon as the 1000 users enter the username and password, the Active Directory distributes the load for RDC as well as the ADC, like 500 there, 500 here, so that they can freely do the operations. They can freely get the authentication done. That is called as RDC and ADC. Child means, as you know, each and every company will have their own policies. Tata Motors has got their own policy. Tata Telecom, they have got separate policy. Tata Software, they have got separate policies. But Tata is a main parent domain, correct? Na? So these are all the child domains. Who? Motors, softwares, and telecom, correct? Na? So separate policy, separate business, but parent is same. That is the reason they create child domain there, because each and every business has got their own thing and each and every company has got their own thing, right? To segregate it as a separate entity, they create a new child there. Okay, that is called as child domain. So RODC, it does operations of everything except uh, only read operations, not everything. Okay,
Okay, sir. Thank
any other question? this is
No,
the,
sir.
this is the structure you see here. You will understand better. See here, I have a forest called contoso.com. See here. So I am calling this contoso.com as a forest. And forest means what? Collection of trees. See, west.contoso.com, east.contoso.com, contoso.com. These are all the different domains. See, domain contoso.com, domain east.contoso.com, domain west.contoso.com. These three domains, we can completely call it as a forest. And each and every domain, see, each and every domain has got a different domain controller, different computer, different users. See, same here, different domain controller, different computer, different users. Here also see, different domain controller, different users, different computers. Okay, if you want, you can establish the connection among each other. That is by you enabling the trust. I will talk about that more tomorrow. And you see a same thing, active directory structure. If you ask, so this is the forest, whatever domains are there, see, domains are represented by pyramid symbol. See, and OU means the OU subfolders. You see here, forest is contest.com. I have two trees, east and west. Domain means east and west. OU means folders to store the classes and attributes like your username, your computer name, okay, your first name, your last name, your manager name, everything is the attributes. Clear?
you. Yes, sir.
Okay. So we'll do one thing. Already 8:35 now. So tomorrow we can get started from the this place, from Active Directory partitions. We'll learn more about the Active Directory. We learn more about the Active Directory thing actually. Okay, database center. You take some photo of it. You just go through this. Taken?
Yes, sir.
Sir, once again, I'll take.
Yeah. Done.
Yeah, it's done.
Yes.
This one also you take structure.
Yeah, it's done.
Okay. So thank you all. Tomorrow we'll just take the rest of the topic actually. Okay. And from day after tomorrow, uh, we will do the practicals. I'm stopping the
Okay.
recording. Yeah.